Lagos, the economic capital of Nigeria, continues to absorb a steady and sometimes rapidly increasing inflow of people from other parts of the country. A large chunk of these visitors oftentimes do not leave or go back to where they came from a few days, weeks, months, or even years later. They usually find a way to stay back, trying to find the means of surviving the worsening economic situation in Nigeria. By virtue of its critical position, Lagos keeps bearing this burden at the expense of its aging infrastructure, and the upshot, most times, has been a spike in crime and other antisocial behaviors, not forgetting squalor taking a toll in every part of the megalopolis. It therefore becomes the lot of the state government to continue to deal with these realities of the fastest rising African city-state, albeit one without the economic benefits enjoyed by its contemporaries in the other parts of the world. Is the Lagos state government doing a good enough job on this? And how can it be helped? Is politics interfering with the development of Lagos? Joining us now to have a discussion around this subject is Funsho Doherty, who is Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Pensions Alliance Limited. Mr. Doherty is also a governorship aspirant on the platform of African Democratic Congress here in Lagos. Good morning, Mr. Doherty.
Good morning.
Good to have you at the studio.
It's great to be here. I'll just note that I ended my tenure as Managing Director of Pensions Alliance at the end of March.
All right.
So I'm here in my capacity as a gubernatorial aspirant.
Okay. On the platform of ADC? On
the platform of the ADC.
All right. So let's start on that note. Why are you aspiring to govern Lagos? And is your Doherty, I know of, what's his first name again? Mr. Doherty of the PDP, who was, chairman of the party. Any relationship, and why what do you want to do with Lagos as an aspirant?
Great, thank you for that question. And to answer your second question first, yes, we are related. Okay. The Doherty family is a very large family in Lagos, as you might know. So we're cousins. Our fathers were brothers. Okay. So we have all persuasions within the family. But it's great to be here, and thank you for the opportunity. I've thrown my hat into the ring for the governorship of Lagos because I believe that we stand at a seminal point in Lagos's history. As you know, Lagos is probably on track to become the most populous city in the world at some point in the future. And many of the things which you noted at the beginning of this segment about Lagos are in fact true. The main driver for me really is around the recognition that we have had a dearth of quality leadership in the public sector space. And that folks who bring a combination of competence and character, which very often we see lacking in the public space, have generally shied away from stepping into politics. They view it as a dirty game. They view it as a game they do not understand, that there's perhaps no clean way to go about it, etc. And I think this is a mistake, because what it means is that we cede the public space to those who would use it for all the wrong reasons. And I think we see that in some of the outcomes that we see. If you take a state like Lagos, many will look at Lagos and compare it with other states and reach the conclusion that Lagos is doing well. But I think that comparison is flawed. Lagos is endowed like no other state in Nigeria is endowed. We have been given a lot, and a lot should be expected of Lagos. And so if you measure Lagos by the right metrics and the right measures, which is what are your outcomes in relation to the resources that you have and have controlled for an extended period of time, I think you reach the conclusion that a whole lot more could have been done than has been done. By 2023, Lagos would have been under essentially one ruling party for almost 25 years, 1 year shy of 25 years.
That's right.
That's a quarter century. That's basically a generation. We talk of a generation being 30 years, right?
That's right.
Nations have moved from third world to first world status in the span of a generation, and we've seen examples. So I think that we should not sit around and wait for another generation, right? We have the opportunity to move Lagos into the ranks it belongs, which is the ranks of other mega cities globally, and not sort of continue this comparison with other states and cities that are less endowed and have less and have been given less than Lagos. I think Lagos can be better managed.
Alrighty. If we look at infrastructure, for example, you'll know that Lagos is densely populated. There are a whole lot of people in this state, in this city. Traveling by road is very difficult. So there have been alternatives pushed through by the current administration to relieve those types of burdens, perhaps more people opting for water travel and the like. So when we talk about population control, you know that there will always be a lot of people coming to Lagos and choosing to set up shop here, choosing to live here. How do you think the population in this state can be better managed as it pertains to transports and other forms of infrastructure?
Thank you. That's a good question. I think that those challenges are true, but I think we should continue to expect that in Lagos. Lagos will continue to attract people. So I think we just have to plan for it and learn to manage it. Mega cities across the world, by the way, are also faced with a similar thing. They attract people. And so we just have to be forward thinking. Now, some progress has been made, but I think a whole lot more could be done. Right? If you talk about transport infrastructure, for example, to what extent have we prioritized these other forms of transportation other than the road infrastructure? So water and rail in a structured, comprehensive, dedicated manner that basically has a plan and delivers on that plan with integrity, right? And I think we could do more in that area. I have in the course of my career worked in other cities that are coastal cities like Lagos. And I spent a number of years in Boston, for example. And it's a coastal city like Lagos. And in the office where I worked, basically you had people of three types. People who came to that same office, some by road, some by rail, some by ferry. Yeah. And just depends on where you live. And you choose the one that's most, and the state can do a lot more in some of these other things. I mean, we've seen the work that's been done on the rail. It is not clear why that project is taking so long to deliver one axis of travel. There are other cities that have started work on their rail systems at the same time that we did and have completed and moved on to other things. And we're still struggling to deliver this. And we have to ask the question, what is it about the functioning of the public sector? What is it about the way decisions are being taken? What is it about the way those contracts are being awarded and managed that causes these kinds of outcomes? I will make one more point, which I think is very critical in the case of Lagos. It's not just about the infrastructure. It's also about how you manage, right, and operate that infrastructure. So when you have large population, it is very important. It's almost like, when you have a lot of people coming into even an airport, for example. It's more important then that you have public order, that people are orderly, that there's law and order in the society, so that even in the use of that infrastructure, you get the most value for it. So if you have a road that's a 3-lane road, but 2 of the lanes are taken up, right, by encroachers or what have you, and that is not effectively policed and managed, and then you have people, maybe commercial buses or what have you, driving in the opposite side of the road, right, because they are almost a law unto themselves, because government is beholden to them. What you have is a situation of disorder. So even the infrastructure that you have, you cannot get the benefit of. And what you're going to have is a chaotic situation. And many will agree that in many ways, Lagos can be chaotic, right? Often you might spend 3, 4, 5 hours of a day in traffic. right? And a lot of that has to do with order, insisting on order in the public space, which, by the way, you cannot insist on unless you first insist on it in the government space. But I can go into that in more detail.
Well, I mean, I would like you to go into it in more details, but then I would like to put a context to your aspiration. You are hoping to run on a platform that is not very popular, that is not one of the two big parties in Nigeria or even in Lagos, not APC, not PDP. First, who are you contesting against at the primaries under the platform of ADC, and what are your chances? If you do scale through and you become the candidate of the party, how realistic is it for you to win? What I know of politics is that those who want to become governors, and they do not run alone. There is a whole apparatus of, politics around them. Other people want to go to the House of Assembly, House of Reps, etc. It's about the political machinery and what they call in that, is a phantasmagoric or something, structure. You know what I mean? How much of structure do you have behind you? Because without that, I mean, yes, you can have Obama-like qualities. You are Lagosian. Even if you win, you will have to, your policies will have to go through the assembly. If you do not control the assembly, for example, which is a key level of power, you face a tough time. You might say that, yes, in 1-2 years, I'll try and convert people, to my side. So basically, I'm saying that what are your chances, politically speaking, not just in terms of beautiful policies, fantastic ideas, but in terms of politics?
Yeah, and it's a good question. And many will think of it as a long shot, right? And so I acknowledge that. But I'll start off by saying that the ADC is not a new party, by the way. It's a party that has been in existence since the mid-2000s. Yeah. So it's not a party without structures, right? The fact that it's not one of the two main political parties does not mean that it doesn't have antecedents. Okay. That's the first thing. Secondly, we do recognize that our platform is not solely a gubernatorial platform. Yeah. We have plans for a full ticket, right? And it may not be 100% of all of the available roles, but certainly in the state assembly, which is what you referred to, yes, which is what is most sort of aligned with the gubernatorial agenda. Yes. We certainly have a plan of action there. Right. And as you know, those two elections happen on the same day. Yes. Right. So there's a synergy that happens between those two things. Now, I think that to address more fundamentally the question that you raise I will address it by first highlighting a statistic, which I'm sure you know very well, which is that if you look at the last election, gubernatorial election in Lagos, we had in total, all the parties, 1 million votes cast. 1 million. Lagos has 6 million registered voters. That is registered voters, not even population, which is about 20 million. So this so-called dominance that we're talking about, how dominant is this dominance? It's all in this, like 1 million. Right, and there's nobody here who's a novice, right? We know that there's money politics in Nigeria and all of that. This whole money politics, which by the way is in the billions and billions, is being played in this 1 million that we're talking about. So what it means is that there are, for every one person that shows up in the polling booth, there are 5 people who are sitting away, right? A 5-to-1 ratio. And why is that? Right? People are disengaged from the process. They do not believe the process works for them. They do not believe there's anybody who has their interest at heart. They don't believe they have a horse in the race. And to that extent, it's almost rational for somebody who has that mindset not to put themselves out to go there and vote. We believe, and this is our whole movement is around this idea, that at the end of the day, if people can be re-engaged, and if people come round to the notion that, look, the power to make change is in their hands, and that there is an option that is an attractive option that will represent their interests in a forthright manner and with integrity, they will exercise that mandate, right? And we do not need all those 5 people to come out and do that. If we get 1.5 out of the 5 that are sitting at home,
that's like 1.5 million.
That's 1.5 million votes already. So this is not to say that it's a trivial task. This is not to say that it's a walk in the park. But it is something that we believe is eminently doable, and we're going to give it everything that's within our capacity to deliver.
Just a quick follow-up to that. Because we're close to the time that candidates will emerge.
Yeah.
By June 3rd, the names will have to be sent,
Yes.
as you're aware, to INEC. If it turns out that you're the candidate of ADC,
Yes.
and you have to run against your cousin in PDP or any other person that the PDP, pushes forward, we know a few other names there. Dr. Adedosumo is said to be back. The young gentleman, Jando, of Lagos for Lagos, is also there.
Yeah.
And then there's the candidate of the ruling party,
Yes.
maybe most likely the sitting governor returning.
Yes.
What will you say to Lagosians that will be different from what, say, the Governor Sanwo-Olu will be saying in terms of continuity, or your cousin Doherty on the PDP, or whoever emerges? What will you say differently that you think will resonate? And what will be the 2-3 key things that you think will be your, shall we say,
your thing, the
do you know
thing
what
that
I mean?
really drives you to want to be governor?
to be governor.
Thank you. I think that's a good question. I think that I'll start off by saying I think that continuity is overrated, particularly if what you are continuing ought not to be continued, right? For me, central to what we're setting out to do is a reform of the government and public service. That is a foundational thing. And it is foundational because it has knock-on effects in each of the other areas that we're looking at, which I will also allude to. What does that reform look like? You want to eliminate corruption. You want to eliminate waste. You want to eliminate self-dealing conflicts of interest in the operation of government business. You want to ensure that government exists and is run in the true tradition of democracy, which is government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Unlike what we have typically seen, in my view, which is government of the people, by some people, for themselves. There are many examples, in my view. So this is the fundamental agenda. And in doing that, we want to look at the public service. You want to ensure that you reform it. You need to pay people well. But once you do that, you then insist on integrity. And when you do that, you begin to address things like the predatory actions of government, which we see a lot of the time, and government agencies and government officials, which we see a lot of the time, where in effect they are preying on the people whom they ought to be serving, right? All of these, right, will go to create an atmosphere. And when you look at countries that have made this leap that I talked about from third world to first world, there's none of them that made it without doing this thing that I'm talking about. There's none. So it's fundamental. When you create that order in the public service, you can then insist on that order in the society for a lot of the reasons that I talked about. We need that order in Lagos, right? It's existential for us, right? So you insist on that. And then that then frees up resources, right, to use in other areas like infrastructure. And infrastructure in Lagos means power, water, waste, things like broadband and transportation infrastructure. Yes. You free up a lot of resources to use in those areas. And by the way, if you've reformed government, the resources that you are deploying in each of these areas, you are deploying effectively with integrity to the best use and using the best contractors or what have you, or arrangements, right? You can then in addition to infrastructure, then look at things like education, quality in education. I don't need to tell you stories about quality in education. We all know and we see. And it's not just the quality of the students that we produce, it's the quality of those that are teaching the students, and which is why you are producing the outcomes that you are anyway. It's not that they are not good people, there are very many good people. But we also know that there are many who are there, who are teaching our kids, who ought not to be. And we need to deal with that. Mm-hmm. Health. Our population is a young one. The median age in Nigeria is about 17 and a half. That means half of the people are below that age, right? So how do you have a society with the demographics of Lagos without health? And health is not about just building health centers or what have you. It is about the quality of investments within those spaces, right? What processes do we have in place? What training do we have? What equipment do we have? What supervision? What management do we have in there to deliver the health outcomes? And then we need to have a focus on maternal and child health to address, I'm sure we all know, women who have died in childbirth, children who have died as newborns, who have no business dying, in other words, because what they died of were things that ought not to be, just basic primary health. Yeah. So our focus is going to be primary health, maternal and child health, and then critical care. Because we do a good job of chronic management. People who have high blood pressure and things like that, those things you have time to manage them, so we do a good job of managing them. But primary health, where we see a lot of mortality, and then critical care, which is where you need things to be done on time, you need facilities in the right places at the right time. We do a poor job of that. So I would say that barbell approach to sustain the public. And Lagos, by the way, is a dense society. So we don't have a huge area like many states. So this thing can actually be put in place if one is focused. To me, I think if you run Lagos the way I've outlined, within 2 years, you won't recognize Lagos.
You can get all this done without a godfather behind you?
You know what? There are godfathers and there's God. But, look, it's not to say it's a collective effort. So you can have a godfather, or you can have the people own their destiny, right? And typically godfatherism is a way of using the system to achieve outcomes for a small group of vested interests, typically. Our movement is not about that. Our movement is an appeal to the people, right? We don't have the war chest of resources to deploy, buying votes or anything. We are not minded to do it. Morally, we don't believe in it. So it's really about appealing to the people to take ownership of their destinies and to reawaken that fire of hope within people. Because what we see a lot of the time is that people are fed up, they've given up, they've disengaged from the process. They think that is the way it's always going to be. But we need to let people know and spread that fire of hope, so that people know that, look, this thing is within their hands. They can take ownership. And this is our campaign slogan, we can be more.
We can be
more.
All righty. I mean, we're running out of time. I think we've got around 3 to 4 minutes left. Yeah. And while I accept what you've said as it pertains to one of your priorities being true quality health, I'd imagine that there are also many things that strike you that need improvement. Now, if we look at the environment of Lagos itself, we know that it's quite alarmingly degrading. And I'm not sure how important climate change is to you as it pertains to this state, but it definitely has its place in the political agenda. If we look at plastic pollution, for example, if we look at the lack of housing because of the fact that Lagos has such a strong coastline, it's degrading soil, making it harder for people to survive in different communities. Do you have a clear and clear and concise plan as to how you're going to tackle the environmental challenges of this state? I know that at this point it's still quite early on. You first need to, emerge from primaries, and then we can look at manifestos. But I'd imagine that people would be inclined to be interested in what plans you have for the long run, despite us being in the very early parts of this political journey.
I think that the environment is an important, which you raise is very important. I think that in a city like Lagos, it's almost it's not something you have to. It's not a choice. It's something that it's required, right? And one of the things I talked about when I talked about infrastructure was waste, right? That's one of the critical elements of infrastructure. So it's something you need to invest in, and invest in both in terms of the operating infrastructure, the systems to deliver the management of the waste. But there's also an investment in the awareness and also in the mindset of people, which also goes into that. But some of the other areas are also related to this whole environment thing. So power, for example, right? Part of the environment is air quality. Air quality in Lagos, I don't know if you even watch CNN a lot of the time and you look at those indices, you'll see that we're perpetually up there. And a lot of that is like diesel pollution and so on and so forth. We think we can do more in Lagos, given its dense characteristics, given its, the fact that we're not very spread out. Even within the fact that, yes, a lot of power issues are national issues, but there's still room, right, for the state to do quite a bit in this area. And we intend to. So clearly we will have, and that agenda will be fleshed out, but it is certainly a core part of our agenda. But I think when you look at one of the things that in any endeavor is that you cannot focus on everything with the same degree of focus at the same time. Otherwise, you probably will not accomplish anything. So if you look at Lagos, there are many sort of foundational issues that we are faced with that we need to address to give us then the flexibility and the resources and the capacity to deal with a broader range of issues, right? But if we don't deal with those fundamentals, we will never get to the point where we have the capacity to deal with those broader issues. And I think that this is part of what we've faced for 25 years, because that foundational, fundamental thing has kept us within a box, right? And we might spend another 25 years and still be in the same box if we don't address those fundamental things. What we ought to be able to do 25 years down is to look back and say, wow, how far we've come, right? But you could actually be in that place 25 years down the road where we're still having this discussion if we're not careful.
Can I just squeeze in one? I know that we're totally out of time. Just to squeeze in these, which is, when you look at Lagos, which city do you see Lagos like? Mumbai, Sao Paulo,
Cairo.
Cairo, for example, the same population, size, but then better run, And then lastly, is this for you about taking Lagos back to the owners of Lagos? Your candidacy.
Okay, so again, I want to see Lagos. A lot of the cities that you've mentioned are cities that I will not call them first world cities per se. They're not. They are dealing with a lot of challenges like we are. And it's true, but I think if I want to aim, I want to look at the New Yorks of this world, the Londons of this world, and understand why they are where they are. To then think about what we must do to get. So if you set the bar, then you aim. If you go to all of these cities, the number of Nigerians you find, they're doing incredible things.
That's right.
Is amazing. And I have lived in some of these cities. Yeah. And there is nothing, it's just about, they're not more intelligent, they're not more gifted, right? It's just that the folks who are making decisions are making the right decisions in the interest of the people. They're not conflicted. They're not sort of choosing which projects to do based on, what is most expedient for them and their vested interests. They're basically figuring out, look, guys, and it's a room full of smart people. Look, guys, what do we need to do? What do we need to do? Now, with respect to my candidacy, and your question again is my candidacy about
taking Lagos for
the owners of Lagos. No, you see, I actually don't view Lagos that way. I don't view Lagos that way. I view Lagos as a cosmopolitan city, like any of the cosmopolitan cities. New York is a cosmopolitan city. Who owns New York? Right? Who owns London? Right? I mean, you can almost argue it's Nigerians that own London, given the number of Nigerians that are there. Right? So for me, Lagos has a history of accommodating settlers, right, and all of that. And so, to me, a lot of even the economic potential of Lagos, a lot of the development we see within Lagos, is folks who are doing things here, who are in Lagos now. They may not have been originally from Lagos, but they are here, they are working and all of that. And we have to welcome and enjoy a diversified society. It's part of the strength of Lagos.
That's right.
Right. So for me, it's about making Lagos work for everyone and not for a small group of people.
Well, Mr. Funsho Doherty,
not for the few.
Absolutely. We want to thank you very much. Aspirant of the ADC, African Democratic Congress. We wish you the very best. Thank you so much for coming to the studio today.
Thank you.